Hello, everyone. How are you? It must be different to see me on this side. I'm Josie Caballero with the Transatlantic Call-In Show, and I have special guest Stephanie Helms here as well. As you know, the Transatlantic Call-In Show is a show where you get to talk to real live trans people and call in to ask us your questions. And it's okay. You can call in and ask any question, and we will be happy to answer them. So, with our guest, Stephanie, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Hi, I'm Stephanie Helms. I'm a sailmaker here in beautiful Casco Bay, in Maine. You're looking up the Portland Ship Channel towards Portland, but you can't see Portland because it's foggy today. Very, very fogged in. It looks like we're about half tide, maybe a little bit low tide right now. But yeah, I'm a sailmaker, professional sailor. Have been both pre and post transition, which happened for me 26 years ago. I'm an old lady, but I still keep at it somehow. As
Yeah.
a wise woman once told me, it's a great life if you don't weaken. So there you go.
Yeah. Well, it's nice. I'm a recovering sailor. I was in United States Navy, so so I don't miss
Well,
the
but
life too much.
yeah, but did you race sailboats?
No, I didn't have the fun time. I was only like
Okay,
Homer Simpson on board a ship, so it's like not too much.
yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Well, it's really, really warm today over here on this side. It is hot and humid, just like the DC swamp is. So exciting stuff. It must be nice to have a nice cool fog on the bay
It
there.
is. It is.
It is. It is.
Summertime's
Well,
coming though.
yeah, that's true. Summer is coming. Summer is already here for me. Oh my gosh, it's so hot. I like got the air conditioner blowing. It's amazing. So everyone, thank you again for being here today, and we'll go ahead and start with the poll from last week. So the poll here is Germany and Sweden recently passed self-ID laws for changing your legal sex. Do you think countries such as the UK and the US will ever catch up? And we had it pretty near pretty close vote here with 54% saying yes and 46% saying no. Stephanie, what do you think about this?
Oh gosh, I missed the question because I was distracted. Say it again.
That's okay. So we have the poll from last week, which is Germany and Sweden recently passed the self-ID laws for changing your legal sex. Do you think countries such as the UK and the US will ever catch up? So we had a narrow victory of 4%, or I guess 54% with yes. What are your thoughts?
I'm more concerned about the UK than I am about the US, and of course, as you know, the US is a patchwork of
Hmm.
different regulations for different states, different jurisdictions. Will we ever catch up nationally? I don't know. I don't know if we can ever forge a national consensus around many trans issues. I hope we can get to a consensus about some of the basic ones, and that's one would be a nice place to start. Uh, Self ID is almost the case in the state of Maine right now.
Yeah.
It was a lot more complicated a while ago, back in the day, but it's uh, changing documents and stuff is a lot easier nowadays than it used to be. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm optimistic, really, for the U.S. The
I'm
U.K. is going through hell.
Yeah, it really is. Oh my goodness. I also agree with the US. We did just have 1557 just passed recently for the Affordable Care Act, which actually protects gender identity, which was a big step in the right direction. Of course, you still have to request enforcement through the OCR or the Office of Civil Rights to be able to amend any of the discrimination that happens. But it is a step in the right direction. So we're hoping that that is a federal step. So we can only hope hope, since they're actually identifying gender identity, that the United States will get a little bit more uniform rather than the patchwork from state to state, like you were saying. So great. So this week's poll is anti-trans messaging a winning political message in this hot political election year here in the United States? It's pretty important to think about, as a lot of these campaigns are hot and going into the election cycle. Stephanie, do you have any initial thoughts on anti-trans messaging being a winning political message? Yes or no?
I don't think it is. I don't think
I
it
don't think
is.
so either.
I don't think it
Yeah.
is. I
Mm-mm.
I think that really in the grand public's heart of hearts, it's same as it ever was. They don't care that much,
Right.
and
Right.
if they do care, it's more of a person to person thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
If someone you know is transitioning or is dealing with that's these sorts of issues, you work through it and you gain an understanding, and it's more of each individual each individual situation works itself out. I think that
Yeah.
I just I don't see I see it as something that people of a certain ideological bent just want to push because it stirs discomfort and fear in their own hearts. And fear is a tremendous motivator that gets the fearful base out to the polls. And I think that I don't think it's a winning message. There are,
Yeah.
in
I
other
think
words, bigger fish to fry.
Yeah, I think that as we see future political messaging, we will see, and I think this is really important to see what people have to say. And see if you are in a state or an area where you think it is. This is going to be really valuable information. So make sure you vote and see what we're going to see next week. I'm very excited about the results and seeing what it is, but I'm kind of with you on this one, Stephanie. I think that they're just reaching for straws here. So, again, I want to remind all of you that you can call in at the phone number below. And if you have some very spicy type of questions, you'll be put up to the top here, and we'll make sure to prioritize your calls so we can make sure to have some really great conversation. And that's what we're hoping for. Yes, Stephanie. Oh,
You know,
it sounds like you were
I
about to say
screened
something. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
I am about to say something.
Yeah, yeah.
I screened a fellow, but I believe his name was Steve. I called into one of the other shows and wanted to talk about his first uh, his first impulse was to bring up the issue. He said he was a conservative, uh, and but he's reevaluating things, and he's pretty much right on board with trans issues. Except he really wanted his stumbling block was the sports issue. And I
Mm,
said, well, maybe I think this was Monday. I think it was screening Monday. And I said, well, maybe you should call in on Thursday because I'll be on the transatlantic call-in show, and I've been a
yeah.
professional sailor for uh, a good long time, and I kind of know that topic. So if I'm hoping Steve calls today.
I hope so too. Steve, if you're watching, make sure you call or click in the web link in the description. Love to chat with you about that, especially when it comes to those controversial issues that maybe people are on the fence on, and talking about things in sports and those very, I guess, razor line issues. I like to say that people may be on the fence on. Those are really great conversations. So I hope that they call in. That'd be wonderful. So yeah, so you said you've been racing sailboats for how long? How many years have you been doing it? If you don't mind me asking.
Um, uh, mm, say 40, Oh, more than that. Yeah. Well, no, 45 years, I guess, since I was in my mid-20s.
Oh, wow.
And,
So you've really been
yeah.
out there.
I
You've seen it
I'm
all.
a sailmaker. I make sails for sailboats.
Oh,
That's been
wow.
my career. So, yeah, and so I've got this, I also make bags. We've got this duffel here, and I've got
Oh, wow.
trees to sew up, and I've gotta do that, and I could give you a tour of the sail off, but I'm kind of locked in right here. But yeah,
Yeah,
uh,
that's true. You're
but
kind
yeah,
of
that's
far.
I've been active in the in several racing classes and big and sailing larger boats. Probably the biggest boat.
Yeah,
Uh,
for sure.
Biggest boat I've ever sailed. The biggest boat I've ever raced was a Swan.
A
Swan
swan.
55, Swan 55, I think, or a custom boat that a customer had built in New Zealand, sailed across the Pacific, and I met the thing in Panama to deliver it to Florida, and it was a fun journey. That was a 54
Yeah.
foot boat.
Wow, that's
So,
incredible. That sounds like a lot of fun,
so
because yeah, go ahead.
sailmaking is not pretty. It's sewing. It's just you sew and you crawl around on your hands and knees and cut stuff
Yeah, it
out.
sounds
And
very labor
you know,
intensive. Very labor intensive, I'm
it's
sure. Yeah.
it it keeps you fit.
Yeah, I bet it's heavy fabric
I'm
for
I,
sure.
I've never won, Jay. I've never won the nationals. I have competed at the worlds and finished in the top 10 with my team. I've competed in let's see, where we finished in the North Americans. I think we were like fifth at the North Americans once, and we qualified for the worlds in Seattle, but I'm not sure the boat's going to go.
Oh, I see, I see. Wow, that's incredible. I wish you the best of luck with that. It's like when it comes to
Thanks.
like competition and sports, like the best I did was really speech and debate in college. Like that's where I was like competitive gold.
let
You know.
let me put it this way. If and I have been to high school reunions, but I think the first one I went to, I sort of said the last thing on earth any of my classmates would have expected me to be 45, 50 years down the road was professional a professional sailboat racer and
Yeah.
female. And I was right.
Yeah,
They were very
wow.
surprised.
That's amazing. Well, we do have a call from Pip, from the UK,
All right.
they, them, and they have a question about the model of physical sex hurting intersex people. So we'll go ahead and bring in Pip. Hello, Pip. How are you? Can you hear
Pip,
us?
you there? Hey, Pip. Pip.
Oh, I
If we
see.
don't
Hold
hear
on. I
Pip,
see the problem. It is fixed
oh,
now. Pip, they
one
should
second.
be able to hear you now. Go ahead.
Yeah. Hey,
Okay,
hello, Pip. How are
now you
you?
can hear. I'm doing
Yes.
okay, thank you. Finally starting to get over this nasty viral infection that just does
Oh
not want to go
no.
away. But with the onset of warmer weather on my end, things are generally getting better.
Good, I'm glad you're getting
Great.
better. What was your question today?
Right, my question today is about whether or not the bimodal model of physical sex is still hurtful to intersex people, because this is based on a conversation I had on Twitter, or as I like to call it now, Twixer, a few weeks ago, with a couple of intersex folks, as I, mentioned how the bimodal model of physical sex is a descriptive scientific model to explain the observations that we see, in humans, physical sex characteristics, but they are descriptive and not prescriptive. However, I am well aware that there are still a lot of, perhaps doctors and a lot of mindset that intersex conditions, for lack of a better term, are, defects, and that they need to be corrected in order to, fully comply with a traditional idea of a binary sex. And while my thought process is that it's this attitude that's these days, this idea that we're shoving people into boxes and that they need to comply to either end, that's the problem and not the model itself. The intersex people I talked to told me that they feel that the entire concept of biological sex needs to be abolished altogether, because it's still coming from a place of a bias where these two peaks are on the model, these two peaks on the continuous graph are still, the categories that people need to fit into. And obviously, babies, until they are, at least, 45, cannot express any sense of self or identity, and so they can't tell us what gender they are, and so we generally go with what their sex assigned at birth for the sake of simplicity. And we can still do the same.
There's an awful lot to unpack here, Pip. There's an awful lot to unpack here.
Absolutely.
So you want to go for this one?
I'll go for it right now. So there is a lot of physical harm that is actually happening to intersex people, especially around birth, because of the models of how they say, oh, this is too long or this is too short, and then they actually perform surgeries on newborns to try to fit into what you're calling the bimodal sex for that child, and a lot of times they get it wrong. And so there is a lot of physical harm that actually happens to a lot of newborn intersex folks that may grow up with different characteristics, but weren't given the opportunity to do so because of the way the doctor will presume what a vulva or what the penis is supposed to be, and then they'll actually snip or leave depending on what their ruler says on the little thing that they have with the tiny newborn. So when you talk about physical harm, yes, it's absolutely harmful, and that is very unfortunate. And you bring up a very strong point about the fact that how the models of the bimodal sex characteristics and biological sex harm not only trans people but all people. And so it's a very, very good point. And Stephanie, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I guess the simplest thing to say is sex is complicated. And talking about sex is complicated. And some people just don't want to talk about it at all, even though they do when they have a particular itch to scratch. There are so many aspects. Are we talking about chromosomal sex? Are we talking about hormonal sex? Are we talking about secondary sex characteristics? Are we talking about what genes? Never mind the phenotypical structures of the chromosomes. Which genes on the chromosomes are activated or not, and what are the consequences of that? And I think the important thing to remember is every individual is individual. This is the whole nature of medicine. In almost every part of medicine, while there are generalities, there are tons of variations. And when we're talking about these things, we're really talking about decisions that have to be made carefully with the patient in mind, with the doctor in mind, and certainly not with uh, uh, societal judgments in mind. Because what we're talking about is human life. We're talking about how a person is going to walk in the world. And that's something that we all have to figure out for ourselves. For some people, it's very simple. For other people, it's not quite so simple.
Yeah,
Yes,
absolutely.
Absolutely. So you go on.
Yeah, I was going to say, and, this isn't just about intersex people either. It's cis people as well, where people will internalize gender roles and how they're supposed to present and all of that. So the harm has so many layers to it. And like Stephanie said, it is complex, and people just need to be able to express themselves the way they need to express themselves instead of having to fit into boxes. So yeah, absolutely, it is incredibly harmful for all people, and especially intersex people who present in very variety of different ways due to their intersex conditions that they may have. So yeah, I think it was a great question, and really thank you, Pip. Is there anything else you wanted to add before we move on to the next call?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that I am by no means justifying any sort of, child genital mutilation.
Of course.
I am a person who is, I am a person who is very much a lover of labels as language. I like to categorize things. I like to use words to explain what we see in life and say, okay, this describes this phenomenon, but it isn't, mutually exclusive. And I also recognize that a lot of what TERFs are doing nowadays is that they're now saying that bimodal sex characteristics are bimodal, but sex itself is binary, which makes absolutely no sense because they're just describing bimodal again. And so I see a strong value. The point is that I see a strong value in having these, distinct labels as descriptive categories. But I also greatly recognize how much harm a society that sees them as prescriptive is doing, not just to intersex people, but everyone in general. And I just have the distinct feeling that I'm not sure we should throw the baby out with the bathwater in having these linguistic terms to describe, sex classification, gender, and whatever. But the point that what we need to change is that we let the individual with those characteristics take the lead and let them, speak and let them define themselves when they are given the language to do so. And as just a final note, I got, last Christmas, I got my niece a queer children's book called My Shadow is Purple. And, when she was, considering, oh, what color is my shadow? She just looked at it and said, black. Because she didn't really, get the concept. She's still only about, only about 5 or 6. But it's introducing the idea that there are a greater array of ways that you can exist as a person beyond what a traditional binary might suggest. And just having that information, just having the words to describe that and see what, if any, labels will fit, I think is just incredibly valuable.
Yeah, and I just want to just emphasize. Go ahead, Stephanie.
It's language changes sometimes quite slowly. I mean, there are all sorts of new phrases that come into favor and out of favor, and language around this issue has certainly changed quite a bit in my lifetime. And I'm sure it will continue to change, but I think the most important thing is to is to cultivate a societal attitude, and really the medical profession has adopted this kind of attitude, that you're dealing with individuals. And the disconnect between the medical profession, society at large, is when you are confronted with uh, a patient or a person in a helping profession, you have to approach that person as a person, and you're not trying to cure or treat
Right.
uh, you, 100,000 people at once. You're dealing with one person. The problem, the disconnect between society and the sorts of things that we do as people, society is broadly speaking, is we treat groups as groups. We construct these groups in our minds and apply a rule to a group that may not be a very good fit for an individual.
Yep.
Yes,
And so
absolutely.
I just want to just emphasize what you said about the labels that we give ourselves is what's key. If someone wants to label themselves as a woman, somebody wants to label themselves as a man, somebody wants to label themselves as non-binary or anything in between, or outside of, that's completely on them. And I think that's the biggest takeaway from this call is the idea that we describe ourselves, we use the words we choose to describe ourselves, and we don't use those to prescribe to others. And so I think what you said is very clear and a very wise way to look at the way of the world on how we identify and look at other humans. So thank you so
Yeah,
much, Pip, for the call. I really appreciate it. We're gonna
Thanks,
move
Pip.
on to the next call now.
no worries.
But
It's
no,
been
thank
lovely
you so
talking to
much.
you.
Yes,
See you around.
lovely. All right, bye bye. Okay, that was a really great call.
That was a
Okay,
good
there we
call.
go. Okay, great. So the next call we have here is going to be the best way to support trans people in combat sports. So let's go ahead and take that call from Carissa, she, her from England. Uh, Thank you for calling in. Go if you would like to go ahead and ask your question, that'd be great.
Hi. First, I just want to check and make sure my audio is okay. I can't figure out how to get this off a
You sound
speakerphone.
great. You sound great.
Okay,
You
Very
sound
clear.
perfectly fine.
perfect. I'm a coach for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which is a very close quarter combat martial art. And I've, especially in the last year, the amount of transphobia, like it's not a super friendly sport to any minority.
Right.
But it's recently really, really exploded with transphobia. And I try to work so hard for inclusiveness. I've been working really hard on a women's program because I really think the sport's good for people. Like if you talk to anyone who trains, it helps you. It helps your soul. It gives you control of your body and confidence. But the sport, the way it is right now, I don't feel is safe for trans people almost as a whole. And I don't know if, like, I push back as best I can, but I'm a female in this sport, so my voice is already very small. I don't know if, like, even my voice is enough. And I don't know how to make trans people feel safe or make them feel welcome, or if it's just the most compassionate thing would be to just say, maybe don't come in this space right now.
I see, I see. Well, I will push back and say, as a female in the sport, your voice is very powerful because you are the one that is a coach in the sport. And I used to do jiu-jitsu back when I was in the Navy. So I completely agree with you about the confidence building, the strength training, and all of the things that go along the sport. And I think that trying to keep somebody away from such a healthy outlet to exercise and do a sport is not great. And so first off, you're right. There is a lot of controversy, particularly around any type of combat sport, around trans people getting into sports. And a lot of it has to do with lack of knowledge, understanding about how hormones work, how different regulational bodies work, like age differences make a difference, and all of the things that are involved, weight classes. There's a myriad of regulations that already exist in a sense that aren't even related to trans people already. So the fact is, like, the sports themselves, when you look at, for example, in American sports, in I think it's the most regulated combat sport that it does allow trans women to compete is, I think, the Florida Association for Boxing, and they actually allow trans women to compete, but they require that trans woman be on hormone suppressants and hormone care for 3 years before they can actually compete. And then there's other associations that allow 1 year, and there's still a lot of different combinations that happen. And then there's also the fact that if you're young, then a lot of times you don't even have any type of advantages because you're young. So if you're like 10 years old going to jiu-jitsu, there's really not a difference between a 10-year-old, regardless of what body you were assigned. So there's a lot in line with that, including also puberty blockers. So there's a lot of things. And I guess I just have a quick follow-up question for you. Are you getting a lot of trans people trying to join your gym?
So specifically in my experience, I've had one trans person interested in sort of talking about coming, and I was hoping to encourage them. And then they sort of fell off. It's hard to get people to start jiu-jitsu anyway. It's a very intimidating looking sport. And then we've had previously on the team a non-binary teen, which some of the coaches adapted. And I'll put, this is not my academy. This is not my school. The professor who runs it is probably the hardest one I've been working on to get his understanding elevated. Sorry, I just remembered. But it's so we've had one already, and then, like, I don't know. I want to make it open and inclusive. I just don't know if I have the ability yet.
I see.
Like, and I want to grow that.
I want to point out.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Can you hear me? Can I
I
just want to point out something. I want to point something out here. I want to point something out for you. Dr. Ben does Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And he's a host on this show. He's probably the best person to talk to about that specific sport. I can speak to the way sporting federations work, the history of trans participation in sport, which at the Olympic level has been an ongoing discussion for 25 to 30 years. Varying degrees of attempts to regulate trans people or defining, well, let's be honest, it's usually a discussion about women. Trans women generally, the only people who have ever been excluded from competition on the basis of falling out of the category woman have been cis women, mostly from sub-Saharan Africa, at the Olympic level, because their testosterone level was too high for competition. It's a complex issue. With regard, in my conversations with Ben, his take was that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu has weight levels. That there are divisions. As my understanding is, and I could be getting this completely wrong, but you should call back when Ben's on the show and have this discussion, because he's very familiar with the whole topic.
Oh, yeah, you're completely right about there being weight divisions. Unfortunately, our two biggest federations just passed blanket, you must compete in your assigned gender, birth gender bans because of a couple viral videos that are, the trans women lost actually. In the viral videos, both times the trans women lost.
Yeah.
And we got blanket bans from that, and that's very recent. That just happened.
And this is,
I'm not.
and this is the and this is the problem. This is the problem. You can't win for losing. You can't win for winning. You know, it's. I want to make this point. Sports is not fair. There is no such thing as total equality. If there were, then there'd be no winners and there'd be no losers because everything would be equal. Some people are gifted in one particular way, other people are gifted in another particular way. Some people don't care about sports. Some people just, but if you do and you want to compete, you usually do not go into a sporting competition to lose. That's not the mindset you take in. The mindset you take in is to do the best you can, and maybe your best will be good enough. So, and this touches back to what I was saying before. What is happening is that there are rules being made, blanket rules being made, to solve a problem that doesn't exist. Because if you really look at participation from trans people generally, society isn't all that accepting of trans people generally. I don't know if anybody noticed that, but particularly in sport, it's been difficult. But the sporting federations, for the most part, up until quite recently, have been looking towards participation as the most important goal. Try to get people into the sport. Try to get people interested in the sport, wanting to compete. And as a matter of fact, the IOC's
that's right.
Structure for framework for trans people with differences of sexual development. That's one of their first principles is inclusion.
Yeah,
and that's because what we want to be trying to do is get people into that the healthy activities of physical activity and the camaraderie that sports foster.
absolutely.
So this whole thing is it's a really tricky little situation. I don't know what to do within your federation, but again, talk to Ben. It's his sport.
So I wanted to mention the new AOC report just came out, and they actually identified that trans women actually have a disadvantage when it comes to participating in Olympic sports, which is pretty obvious when you're doing testosterone suppression to near zero. You're not able to retain the muscle mass, and it's actually proven now that trans women actually have a disadvantage when they actually transition to get into sports. I did want to ask you, Carissa, really quickly. So you said that your federation, is that the federation that your gym works with, or is your gym that you work for separate from the regulation body that says trans people can't compete? Carissa, are you still there? Oh no, did we lose you?
Oh, it looks like she dropped. We have been having problems with the web caller lately, so
Oh, okay. We've had some problems with the web caller.
Oh, bummer.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah.
But Carissa, if you're still listening, one of the things that you can do is continue to voice your opinion, continue to talk about the fact that you are comfortable as a coach, letting trans participants participate, and that your expertise in the sport itself will be able to make sure that you put up safety rails and you're able to make sure that all your students are safe. Because if you're going to, if you, and you know this better than I do, Carissa, if you're still listening, that you're not going to put up an expert, black belt jiu-jitsu fighter to the kid that just walked in the day of and say, spar as hard as you can. It's the same type of situation. You're going to be able to assess the participation of your athletes to make sure that your athletes are safe. And that's what's the most important, is that from what I can tell from the way that you approach sports, it goes with what Stephanie was saying about participation, making sure that the students have access to a healthy, safe environment where they can participate, have fun, stress relief, camaraderie, all of the self-confidence boosting, everything you began the call with is incredibly important. And that's what we need to be discussing when we talk about sports in general when it comes to trans people, because it does more harm than good to eliminate trans people from the access to participate in sports so they can have a healthy outlet to increase their mental health, their physicality, their physical health, so they can continue to participate in society at all levels. So I really appreciate your call. I'm sorry that you dropped off, but I am very appreciative of that call for sure.
That was a great call.
It call. Was, and it's a very important topic.
We have someone in the someone in the chat. It's Chachu Ingwe is saying, if one female took steroids for 10 years and then stopped, how long would it take for unfair advantage over other athletes to go away? Is it overnight? Hey, Chachu Ingwe, this is a call-in show. You can call in and ask that question. There is, in fact, data on the effects of medical transition in many ways, and we'd be happy to discuss that. So call the show.
And also, you're always free to do super chats as well. We're always still accepting and always taking super chats, so we'll be sure to read them at the end of the show as well. So we do have a call that just kind of wants to wax philosophically about the idiocy going on in the UK, and that's from Jack from Bristol. Jackie.
Hello. Yeah, well, I just thought it was worth. Stephanie called it out at the start, and I thought it was worth mentioning that we've had a double down on the culture wars in the UK this week. So it's over the weekend we had the NHS consultation with the let's ban trans women from single sex wards, which just seriously, there's literally no evidence for across 102 trusts of there ever being a thing. And then just yesterday we had the one that slid in under the radar, which was it's crazy. It's basically a call for anonymous tackling on any organisation that's giving government organisations bad advice on the Equalities Act. As it relates to trans people. It's just,
of course,
I know. And
what qualifies as bad advice? Tell me this.
Anything we don't agree with. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
And we don't have Jackie's name. You go by she, her pronouns, and you're from Bristol. So I just wanted to make sure that the audience knew where you are from and your name. And it's Jackie, correct? Is that how you pronounce it?
Jackie, yeah. Jackie.
Okay, all right. Sorry, I'm terrible with reading names and currencies as it goes. As well. No, you're absolutely right. Currently, we're not a lot of these lawmakers, especially in the UK and a lot in the US as well, are not using scientific means to be able to come up with these decisions. These decisions are purely political and are not based in any form of scientific fact or reality. And what they are doing is they're causing a lot of this unrest within the community itself. And it's become very in vogue for these conservative anti-trans legislations to add a snitch rule, where you can basically snitch as a citizen to basically say, hey, they're not doing the thing that I agree with, they're not doing the thing, or this family's providing health care to their child, and actually have the state and the government come in and try to affect the operations of families and personal family matters, as well as organizational matters, as you said. And it really goes back. Where in any of these, since you are more closely connected to these, were these all citing the Cass review, or are these things just completely out of the blue?
This is largely out of the blue. The NHS consultation happens every 10 years, but this particular part was floated by the health secretary a couple of years back and then died a death. And it is, I like to describe it as the death throes of a bunch that realise they're out on their ear at the end of the year. I mean, the opinion polls in at the moment show this massive swing to the Labour Party, but the problem is the Labour Party is both siding it and aren't really coming out against it either, which is just annoying. I don't think they'll be quite as invested in the culture wars, but this is kind of separate to the Cass review. I mean, I've been out 14 years now, and so not quite as long as Stephanie, but I mean, it's the worst I've seen it in quite a long time. Let's put it that way.
So I have a question.
It sucks.
Yeah, it does. So I have a question about our poll that we have for this week that's coming up. Is anti-trans messaging winning, right? And so in the United States side, I would think, no, it's not actually winning. It's actually falling flat on its face. But on the UK side, what do you think, as a citizen who lives in the UK?
I don't think it's winning. I think it's popular at the moment because there's a bunch of people heavily invested in culture wars and they want to create a boogeyman. They want to create someone for everybody to hate, right? But
I see.
Look, the people you meet on the street, I've had a fairly privileged transition over my time compared to quite a lot of people I know, but I can still count the incidents of direct in my face hate I've had on my fingers, right? Which is pretty low compared to a lot of people. And generally, and I mean, I find this the world over. I travel all over the place. Heck, I was in Austin for the eclipse a couple of weeks back, and I used the public restroom in a service station, and no one cared, right? And it's the same over here. I mean, I always tell this wonderful story about quite early in my transition. I was gone to the toilet in a big store, and I was inside the toilet, and this Welsh woman came in and started complaining quite loudly about the other toilet being broken. And Welsh women can get a bit angry, shall we say? And I was like, oh dear, is this going to go badly and stuff like that? And so I crept out of the toilet, kept my face hidden, sort of snuck up to the mirror. She went into the toilet, and then I was just washing my hands. Next thing I hear is door rapidly coming open on the toilet, and I'm like, oh no, here we go. And his head sticks out and says, I've got to ask, what perfume is that?
Aww.
And it's like, yeah, exactly. And that's the kind of thing that generally happens on a day-to-day basis. You meet nice people,
right.
And there is just this small group of very loud people who just want to make it miserable for an even smaller group of people because they can. So in answer to your poll, it'll get better. It'll take its time, but it'll get better. You've only got to look at a lot of the younger generation. I'm Gen X. I'm getting on a bit, but you look at the younger generation. They don't care. They really don't care. So
I've got my issues with Joe Biden, but at least he's willing to give lip service to, and occasionally accomplish really quite remarkable things. Like in the United States, Title IX has been revised to give protections, which is what the federal rules that govern aid to education. trans people have been protected in there as a protected characteristic. I think that's great, because we've all been sort of sitting back and saying, well, you say you have our backs, but our backs are against the wall and there's a firing squad over there. Take care of them, please. Mm-hmm. But at least the man says, we see you, we care. I don't see that from Keir Starmer. I see Keir Starmer just tucking his tail between his legs and running off in the other direction. It's, trans, we can't, we need to be careful with all this. You don't need to be careful. You need to be humane.
Yeah, the only party that's come out really and said, no, trans rights are human rights, trans women are women, trans men are men, is the Green Party. And they've got a few policies around the climate that align with my thinking. They don't have, they don't normally align with my general politics, to be perfectly honest, but I voted for them today in our local elections because the council leader is my former therapist. So, and I know her, I know that she will lead them in the right direction. So I'm prepared to vote for them. And it comes down to that now for me.
Yeah, and and in the UK you have, the ability to be able to bring in more coalitional governments and have more people to vote for. So, so it really is a statement. And, I think every trans person should be able to vote for their own human rights and dignity. And, and I think that vote actually matters. And so I appreciate you actually taking that step and doing that. But yeah, thank you so much, Jackie. Like, I really appreciate the call and talking deeply about these issues in a way that really gives me a lot of hope, right? Because people would, the UK is so aptly named Turf Island so much. But in reality, when we go to the toilet, when we go into, public life, most people don't care. Right. I have a very similar story early in my transition where I went to Target for the first time fully presenting as myself. And I was in the makeup section and this woman came up to me and asked me, she's like, what kind of eyelash curler should I get? Like, the cis woman was just like, so which one is the better one to get? And I was like, oh my gosh, is my makeup on point enough for a cis woman to come in and be like, hey, you know what you're doing? Can you tell me which one of these things to use? And it was just like one of the most uplifting experiences. And it's like you said, people just don't care, right? People just want to interact with humans in society. And it's only the few hateful people that try to be loud to create this intimidation bubble for people to be afraid to have those experiences, to be able to go into the public restroom for the first time, to be able to go to the Target makeup session for the first time. That's what their goal is. And as long as we continue to go out and be visible, more of us are going to share that experience of acceptance in society. So I really appreciate you.
I truly believe that it's about creating empathy. We have to be visible. Yeah. We have to get people to see us, to realize we're normal people, and to empathize with us. And when they do that, they can't other us anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much. Is there anything else you wanted to mention before we let you go?
No, there's a super chat from me with a really, really crazy point, but you can deal with that when you get to it.
Okay, we'll deal with that then. Yeah. Thank you, Jackie, and you have a wonderful day.
Bye.
All right, bye.
Thanks so much.
Right. Well, thank you.
Hi, producer popping in. So we don't have any calls currently on the line. There is a never-ending parade of trolls in the chat who are really, really brave in chat, but, don't want the larger platform to actually have their views face scrutiny. So,
wow.
What I'm proposing, because I know Josie has a 90-minute time limit cap, is we move on, maybe take a couple super chats, and I'll leave a line open if people are feeling like they're, maybe big kids wearing their big panties and want to call in. We'll go back to a caller, and if not, then that's just what we've got on the plate. So.
No, that's fine. So So all of you trolly trolls in the chatty chat that want to continue to just be cowards, how about you actually, like Arden said, put on your big girl panties and come on to say something, and actually have a conversation with us instead of hiding behind the anonymity of the chat, because we will not take your nonsense and we want to actually have an actual conversation with you. So call in and you will be prioritized.
We won't
Yeah.
give you cooties. We're not going to give you cooties. It's okay.
Yep.
You can take your little finger and dial the little number or your little mousey and get on the line. We're anxious to talk to you because we want to know why you hold these views. I'm curious. I'd like to know why. If you want to talk to a trans person, here's your opportunity. Call the line. We're here.
And anyway. we won't bite. So yeah, at least too hard. So we'll go ahead and get into super chat since I am a very busy woman working all the time, because right after this I gotta go take another meeting professionally because I'm professionally trans doing all the work. So let's go ahead and go into our first super chat. And you can still call in while reading super chats, so don't be afraid. So $10 from William Matz. Hello, you two. How is everything going? I think things are going well. I've been working all day, and then this is the perfect time for me to have some time and chill with the chat and talk and have some great conversation. So I'm actually doing fantastic. How about you, Stephanie?
I'm doing good. I've been sewing all day. I've got my bag here. I've got it, and after this, I'll be getting together with High Side Bree McCune and Ember Bellerad and myself and Carly Chardonnay Webb on a show later on, 8 o'clock my time. What's that? Oh, midnight UTC. Right. A new weekly news show called The Transpositions, and it's a channel we put together just to do news, sports, and weather with a focus on trans issues, and we just do that weekly Thursdays after this thing. So that's what's coming up, aside from going back to the sewing machine and making more of these things.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Thank you.
Yes, okay.
Well, that sounds good. Sounds fun. Awesome. Great. And then you can read the next super chat that comes in as soon as it comes up. Great.
Again, $10 from William Mattis. This one shouts out the mods, the call screener, the producer, and Fia Halo. I think I said that right. Who, without all our experience, would be just plain garbage.
True.
Yeah.
It's true.
Thank you,
William. The mods and producers and screeners make it happen. It's true. Thank you. Thank you. All right, $4.99 from Luis Richardson. I think we should all say that anyone who is against trans rights is as bad as a puppy murderer. Oh yeah, I mean, yeah.
Well, Christy Nome. Shout out to Christy Nome.
Christy Nome, who is a renowned and well-known transphobe, has now come out with her own words as a puppy killer. Like, you can't make this stuff up, people. And goats.
And horses.
She really loves to. Yeah, she wrote in her book how she was not satiated enough for blood for killing her puppy, that she decided to grab the family goat because it smelled rancid. Amazing, a goat smelling bad.
God.
Taking it to the same gravel pit.
Goats do smell bad, so.
I know, it's like, oh my God. And so there is the spitting image of a transphobe right there, who's a governor, who is an animal killer. Vicious animal killer. So Yeah. Thank you, Luis, for that, bringing that wonderful imagery into our into our wonderful time here. Thank you, thank you. All right, go ahead.
Okay, 20 pounds from Jackie Greenland. I had a crazy argument on Threads the other day. Another trans woman was arguing that asking her pronouns was transphobic because it, quote, wasn't acknowledging her transition and was disrespectful. What are your thoughts? Wow, that's...
Yeah, I've encountered some of those dolls, where they feel like, oh, I deserve the right to presume my gender. I worked hard so I can assimilate society. Well, I disagree with this trans woman wholeheartedly. I think that asking your pronouns should be just as simple as asking somebody's name. I do it all the time with people. Doesn't matter if they're trans or cis. I think it's a good habit to do. And I think anybody who falls into that trap as, a trans person getting angry about being asked their pronouns is really stepping into pick me behavior. They're trying to say, I'm one of the good ones.
Words out of my mouth. I was just about to say, pick me's a bad look. It's just a terrible look. It shows some insecurity, and what it's the reason I call screen for the line. It's the reason we ask people to give their pronouns is so that the chat knows, so that the hosts know. Just it out of just plain courtesy. We just want to be treating each other with respect from the get-go when we start a conversation. And it really is pick me behavior because it's to me it shows that this person is thinking, has that little hamster wheel going in there. Do I pass? 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 And it's like, honey, just live your life. You'll pass. You're fine.
Right. It's fine. It's absolutely fine. No, I agree. It's fine. It's a little insecure. Oh, we actually do have a call that just came in, so we'll pause the super chats.
I saw that.
Where we'll go ahead and take this call from Lelena. I'll ask them to share their name so I know how to pronounce it. Hello, you are on Transatlantic Call-In Show. Could you give us your name and pronouns?
Hi,
and your question,
my name is Lelena. Yes, sorry, my name is Lelena.
Lelena, thank you.
Lelena, yeah, like Elena, but with the L in front. And my pronouns are she and they.
Got it.
And so my question is that, it's kind of a long question, I'm sorry.
Go for it.
Sorry, I don't have anything to fight with you about. It's not going to be exciting necessarily, but
no, it's fine.
So my issue is that I am a non-binary trans femme. I came out 4 or 5 years ago, and I at the time was an elementary teacher. And so it was like 2021. I had been out for like a year. And it's been going okay. I was, being tolerated, but then I was targeted by libs of TikTok, and subsequently after that, targeted by Kiwi Farms. So it all happened within a matter of hours, and I was pulled out of class like that day because they got onto the parents' Facebook group, and so they doxed me, got on the parents' Facebook group, started spreading lies about me, and yada, yada, yada. I ended up leaving teaching for my safety, for my family's safety, and for my students, because I was immediately getting death threats, and it was just very, very traumatic. And so I've been out. I've taken time. I had a number of surgeries, and then had to recover from those. And I'm now done with all of that and living off of savings and looking for work. So with a degree in art, in art education, I don't want to teach. I don't want to be in such a public-facing situation. And I would love to do something creative. I would love to do something for trans advocacy. But I don't know where to start. I've been applying to job after job after job, and had a couple of interviews that were just too far away, and so I don't know what to do. So I was just wondering if you had any advice.
Well, first I want to say I'm so sorry that happened to you. I can only imagine how difficult this has been for you in your life and your family and everybody who you're connected to, and your students for losing such a fantastic person in their lives in art education. So I just want to say sorry that happened to you, and that shouldn't happen to anyone. And I hope that you have a strong support network around you to keep you strong throughout all of this. And it's incredibly brave to even share this story with us. So I want to say thank you for the grace of sharing that with us.
Thank you.
And and as far as working in advocacy and finding work, job markets, I could always give the generic apply every day, apply to as many jobs as you want, look at the, remote work and do all of that type of thing. And which I think is generally good advice, right? Apply for work like it's a job full time, 40 hours a week, apply. And that's how you get work. And it's not glamorous. But it is how you do that. But working in advocacy, there's so much need for people to be working in advocacy, looking at different groups, even organizations that aren't hiring yet. Even just saying, hey, if you have any interest, throw a resume at them. You don't know if they're setting up and gearing up for a job. It shows that you're motivated. I work for a national organization myself that is trans-led, and we're always setting up for the next job hire, right? So even just saying, hey, here's my resume, put it on file, call me, is also a very helpful way to do it. And wear your transness with pride. I always say I'm professionally trans, because I have the privilege of working in trans rights, right? And it's
and
really
that's something
great.
I really would love to do. If I could, that would be the one way that I would actually be public facing again, is to just be out there fighting the fight and doing what I can for my community as well as other marginalized communities. And but I went back to school for social work for a second, for one semester, but it was very disheartening. There was a lot of microaggressions. At my internship, I had people ask, in the first week, I had 2 different people ask me what my dead name was. I had somebody ask me if I'd had the surgery. I had someone ask me, and these are social workers.
Social workers,
I had someone compare me to a drag queen. It was just awful. I ended up having to do a DEI training. But I did a DEI training for that agency because I went to their CEO and I was like, hey, your staff does not know how to talk to trans people, and you have trans clients. I've seen them. And let me just tell you all the things I've been asked and told in the last week. And he was like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. And he actually allowed me to do a training with the staff to teach them how to speak to trans people and what to say and what not to say. But it was just one thing after another, not just there, but at school, the school itself, that was a real letdown. And so I ended up leaving. But I want to, I think I'm still kind of traumatized, so
of course.
When I think about going and working in a place where it's all just cis people, it's frightening. And so I think that's keeping me from applying as much as I would like to be able to. and living in a place where there's no clear organizations.
Sorry. Let me first of all congratulate you for taking the initiative and going to your supervisor and explaining that this is what was going on in his or her or their organization that's supposed to be fostering a caring community. That's just crazy. And good on you for doing that. And that might be something that I don't know if you found that valuable, but darn, that's needed. Yeah, kudos for you for doing that. And I guess just along with Josie, just that's the sort of thing. If you show up, find out some of the organizations around you that do focus on involvement in advocacy or involvement in support or involvement in DEI training. The U.S. Sailing asked me to participate on a panel. Wait a minute. to talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion in the sport of sailing. So if you as Josie said, put yourself out there, full-time job, resume here, resume there. Here's 40 hours a week, and get around. I know that must have been terribly traumatizing to you to be affected that way, and it's another illustration of the power that Chaya Raichik undeservedly has to go after individual people who have done her no harm at all except exist.
Right. And I was powerless to do.
I don't know what it is about people that think that they really should have that power, or once they do have it, just wield it with such reckless abandon.
Yeah, and you can see, like, in the video of her in that interview with Taylor Lorenz, like, she very clearly isn't passionate about it. Like, it's just a grift. Like, it's very, very clearly she has no understanding or interest in the subject. Like, she's done no research. She's just like a troll, like, and it's just a way for her to gain notoriety and money. And it's really, really sad that, like, that's more important to her than, like, people's lives.
Yeah. And so, Liana, thank you so much for sharing all this. And I just want to say, as a trans woman of color, myself, I'm always usually the only trans woman of color in a room, especially when I go, even though I am working for a trans-led organization, I go to, like, I speak at, like, the Women's Leadership Forum for the DNC. I'm the only trans woman of color in there. I go to many panels and many conversations. I'm usually the only trans person in the room a lot of times. And that feeling of being the only one never gets easier, right? You just become aware and more aware of it. Right. And that I think that is something that you can work through and be able to do, and become more confident. Right. Because that's really what it is. It's like, it's the confidence of saying, I'm here and they can't stop me from being here. And it's going to take a lot of work. I recommend, therapy, help you get into that space of like feeling more safe, right? That's always going to be very, very helpful. I always recommend it because I have therapists. Everybody should have a therapist. It's very important.
I'm absolutely a believer in that. Yeah.
Good. And so really know, and I want to say this on the giving of the DEI training and things like that. It looks like we just lost Stephanie. It's okay. When it comes to the DEI stuff, I just want to say this to you, and I want to say this to everybody who's listening, anybody who's trans. It is not your responsibility to give your labor to explain your existence. And in reality, the organization itself should be hiring professionals and paying them to come in and do that training for you. It should not be up to you. It should not be up to any trans person or any minority to come in and say, hey, this is how you treat me, right? And that happens so much in a lot of communities.
Make no mistake, I billed him for it.
Good, because it's your right to. And so just remember that's something that a lot of organizations think is really easy labor for them to hire somebody who's diverse and then tell everybody in the organization, oh, by the way, this is what trans is. This is what a pronoun is.
Mm-hmm.
This is why you don't ask the question. We do that every day of our lives, coming out every day. It's exhausting, and it's not fair, and it's not good to our mental health. So you know, I just want to say I salute you for doing the training, because you did that and you billed them for it, and you did that and you're helping another trans person in the future by giving that knowledge. But just remember that it should never have to be on you to do that. Right.
No, I'm
really
aware.
important.
I'm aware of that completely. And like I said, like I'm very much aware of that, like that tax that we have to pay, right? And of our free labor very often. And I do it all the time in chat rooms and on, you know, comments sections and stuff like that. But, you know, it is something that I'm passionate about. Like, and I, you know, I want to do it, you know.
And
then there's sometimes where I can't, you know, we all like burn out. And
yeah, we do.
You know?
And you need to put that in your cover letters.
Something that I would.
You need to put that in your cover letters. You need to put it in your skills. You need to put it in your resume in a way that makes sense, that you can produce that type of labor, right? You are an asset to any company that hires you, and that's how you got to look at it. So every application you put in, you are giving somebody an opportunity to be able to have your presence in their organization. And that should motivate you to apply to those jobs. You are a precious commodity, right? They're hiring a unicorn, somebody that is going to be so special, that is going to bring up and elevate their place of work. So and for every organization you don't apply to, you're not giving them the opportunity to have you on board. So when you think about it looks like my camera just went nuts. Okay, I don't know if you can still hear me. I need to reset my camera.
We can hear you, but yeah, we do
I'm
see
intentionally
just the
not watching the screen because it'll confuse me.
Okay, I think the screen should have restarted. If it didn't, I'm going to have to give me 1 second. And gosh, it didn't work. Okay.
Oh no.
Let's see. We're seeing the Elgato thing, which in my experience usually has to do with if you're trying to send your Elgato to multiple places.
Okay.
You use OBS, right? I'm sorry, Leilana. I'm like taking over to
no problem. No worries. I'm gonna get it fixed right now.
I would check what camera vMix is looking for you, because if vMix might be trying to get Elgato when it needs to get like the OBS virtual cam or something.
Yeah, well, I was using the Elgato virtual cam. I don't know if Elgato crashed on me. I think that's what happened. So you can continue on without me for a second while I figure this out. So I'm still here. Go ahead, Stephanie.
Okay.
Oh, Steph, you're muted now too? Oh my god.
You're muted.
I'm muted. Okay. Yay! Technical issues.
Hi,
here we are. We're back. Yeah, what Josie was saying is absolutely right. You are a unicorn. You are a unique asset to anyone who would hire you with your experience, your life experience, and your work experience. I think, and I think that you know, I think art is tremendously important. The humanities are tremendously important. You know, bringing joy into people's lives is tremendously important. And these are all things that, you know, we can we can bring with a really unique perspective to any organization. So don't give up the ship. It's all good.
Oh, okay, I won't. And if y'all ever need another host, hit me up.
You know what we need? You know what we need? We need call screeners. There's all sorts of things on the line that yeah. So drop a
right
a
now
note.
I've got a lot of free time.
She's back.
I'm back. Yes,
Yeah,
I figured out.
I forget what the email address is, but the Q&A line. I think it's Q&A line at Gmail. And drop a note and get involved. We'll love to have you hanging around.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
So thank you so much for the call. I hope that was a little bit motivational. But you're awesome, and I hope to see you in the movement. For sure.
Okay. Yes,
okay.
You will.
Okay.
All right.
Great.
Thank y'all so
Have
much.
A wonderful,
I appreciate
wonderful
it.
day. All right. Bye-bye.
All right. You too. Bye-bye.
Okay.
Okay.
So I'm going to bump in again.
So we can
I'm sorry.
do super chats.
I see the screening room. There's someone calling in, but they also explicitly say that the subject isn't really about trans issues, and then Josie has to go shortly. So I'm going to just drop this caller and close the lines for the day, and we're just going to wrap up the show there. So thank you to Dragon, our call screener, and let's get on to those supers.
Yeah, we'll get on to the supers. Sorry, caller. Call in next week. Okay, so we were here. So I think I'll go ahead and start with $20 Canadian from Kathleen Moncrief. Hashtag Team Josie and Stephanie, one of the best host combinations ever. Oh, well, thank you. I think so too.
$5 from Carissa Grimm. I'm so sorry. I just got disconnected, stupid UK internet. Thank you so much for your input. Well, it was great hearing from you, Carissa. It was a good call. We really enjoyed speaking with you. So thank you so much for your input. Great. You made it the transatlantic calling show again.
Thank you. Great. $4.99 from Louise Richardson. If equally mixed trans and cis women basketball and volleyball teams could play in public, everyone would see there's no real difference. I agree. There are a lot of sports that are co-ed, and I think that there are some value in that, especially when it's like non-competitive, just like recreational, like, oh, we're going to go practice together. So yeah. I agree.
Yeah, well, sailing is pretty co-ed, and sailing's rather unique in that the last year at the collegiate nationals, the U.S. Nationals intercollegiate thing, it was at Kings Point in New York. The Stanford team won, and it consisted of 12 women and 9 women and 3 men. And the championship teams were both skipper and crew were women. It's a unique sport. It's super equipment dependent. But in our survey of trying to work through some recommendations for U.S. sailing as to what do you do about inclusion, we found that there's no advantage to having a guy on the boat. It's pretty funny, the differences are so much more about what about your basically weight and size. That anybody can play the game once they figure out how to do it. So
yeah. All right, next super chat. Oh, $5 from Alyssa Nguyen, my buddy, my also reactor operator friend from the Navy. I think the anti-trans messaging is just temporary surge in reactivity. Haha, nuclear joke there, love it. Trans athletes are no strangers to loss. You know the rules, and so do I. Yes, thank you so much, Alyssa.
Yeah. All right. Another $5 from Alyssa Nguyen. Language is weird. there's a verb in English that means to send someone a URL to a specific music video from Rick Astley, often in a deceptive way. Really?
Yeah.
I wonder what that verb is.
Thank you. $5 from Look at the Trees. Trans rights are humans' rights. Yes, they are. And I love the name. I love trees. I like to be in a hammock with them.
$10 from SJL. SJL. Okay. I'm surprised not to have heard any talk about Renee Richards. She was my first memory of knowing about trans people. I probably thought at the time it gave her an advantage, but I'm better now. Now, that's funny you should mention Renee. Renee is sort of one of these Karens. She's sort of gone a bit pick-me since her days as a player, and also, interestingly enough, as Martina Navratilova's coach for a little while. And so I recall an interview with Martina, who is absolutely not in favor of trans women in sports at all. Someone asked her, well, how did you feel about Renee? And she said, oh, no, we didn't have any problem with Renee. We would have thought differently about it if she started winning, which shows the problem here. We're not really talking about sports. We're not really talking about fairness. We're talking about, a particular mindset that doesn't want to look at the studies. There's the Canadian Center for Ethics in Sport, which is their anti-doping agency, commissioned a study that studied all of the research from 2011 to 2021 inclusive, all of the research on that, on the topic of trans women in elite sport. And their conclusions, they published it in 2022 or 23. I think it was 2022. Their conclusions were, we really shouldn't be kicking. There should not be a blanket ban. People need to consider what to do, and people need to consider what rules and regulations are necessary for inclusion and safety and all of this. But there should not be blanket bans. Nobody, you can say that to people and point at that research, and they'll just say, yeah. But trans women are really men when they step onto a tennis court, or when they step onto a soccer pitch, or when they step onto a sailboat, or anything that has to do with competition. That is really weird.
Yeah, it is. So this is our last super chat to come in. $10 from Defense Trans. Hi, it's Liliana. Lelena. Thank you. Wow, I can't speak today. It's the last chat. Thank you both so much for your advice and encouragement. I truly admire what y'all do for all of us. Big hugs. Big hugs to you. I really hope to see you soon. So with that is the first show of me being the actual driver host, and I'm so happy to have you, Stephanie, as my first guest host as well.
It was super fun.
It was super great time, super fun time. So thank you again. This is the Transatlantic Call-In Show. I'm Josie Caballero, and this is name?
Helms.
Your name? Yeah.
Helms. Your name here. This is your name here.
Yes, this is your name here. So thank you, everybody, and we hope to see you next week again for the Transatlantic Call-In Show here on the line. Thank you so much for all of these amazing humans. Look at all these amazing humans here. They're just all incredible patrons. You can be a patron. Sign up. Be a patron.
You should be a patron. I'm
a patron.
We need it.
Yeah, we need it so
bad. Keep this stuff going,